Welcome. I'm very excited to have this conversation with Steven Evensen at Gerber Kawasaki, financial advisor. And I'm Sammy. I'm a real estate broker in Los Angeles. And I feel like it's like real estate versus stocks. Like, who's gonna win? And all the real estate folks like me are like, real estate, like stocks is whatever, and I feel like all the financial advisors are like, just invest in stocks and you'll become a millionaire. And so I'll be honest, I'm not really like that interested in most financial advisors. But I met Steven a few at least a year or two now ago. And I just really, yeah, I liked that he was not like, tunnel vision and everything he's shared about how he helps his clients figure out like what their financial goals are, whether that's, I don't know, everybody has different financial goals. And he's actually encouraged people to invest in real estate, and we've gotten to work together with some of his clients. So anyway, I'm super excited. I asked if Stephen would be willing to chat with me a little bit more about what what is it that you do in your meetings with people? Like, how are
Sure.
you actually helping people? What does it look like? So, um, yeah, so I just wanted to intro him and ask him to talk a little bit about like what does it look like to work with a financial advisor to meet your goals, whether that's real estate or not. So take it away. Show us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, what an intro with that battle right there. Real estate versus stocks. I thought we were gonna get heated. Uh, First and foremost, I really help people reach their financial goals, whatever that may be, right? Kind of like that meme or that commercial, if you've ever seen it. Like, I don't think it just has to be real estates or stocks. It's like, why not both, right? Like, you can do what you want with your financial goals. And it's been great partnering with Sammy because he's helped a lot of my clients actually get into homes, see what makes the most sense for them, looking at investment properties. And he's been a great fiduciary partner of mine. So, what I do is I help people get to their goals, whatever it may be. A lot of what we're going to talk about today is how do you afford a house in LA? How do you afford a house in Southern California? How do you get to this huge down payment? How much you can afford and how you actually get there, right? So, we're younger individuals. Sammy's a homeowner, real estate guy himself. I'm saving for a home myself. And a lot of what we do is help people get to this initial plan, right? So to start today, I want to show kind of one, and I'll talk with Sammy about what a house actually costs, right? How much you need to purchase a home, which we can go back and forth about how much you need for a down payment, as well as how much or how to actually get to these down payments and make sure that you're hitting your goals, right? So today, let's talk about just buying a place in LA to start first and foremost. Um, I'm going to keep it simple and I don't want to get too complex with, the mortgages and stuff with PMI and FHA and everything else. So we can talk about a simple, right? Um, Let me know when you could see my screen here. Okay. So just to keep simple numbers, we're
Yep.
going to buy a nice, beautiful, cheap home for $1 million in Los Angeles. Lovely.
I love the
Yes.
$1 million numbers.
Just nice and easy, you know. Another day in the office for us here. Okay. So with that, mortgage rates, what are they at, Sammy? Six.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. Um, let's just do 6.5 to
Yes.
keep it somewhat realistic. Although, depending on what down payment assistance program you use, if you need that, so you could either buy the rate down or there's sometimes higher rates. But yeah, let's just use 6.5.
Ton of complicated things you could do with down payment rates, everything else. That's why you'd work with Sammy, different mortgage partners, right? To see what makes the most sense for you. But let's keep it simple today, for example purposes, right? So buying a home in LA, be around $1 million. Number one, you're going to need about $200,000 for a down payment, right? This is just the initial cost to get into the home, right? Not always including closing costs and other things, but just kind of a gateway of, hey, I have this much money saved up. I could really start to look at this property and take things seriously. Two, another big thing we look at is the actual cost of the home per month. right? So $6,500 a month is it's no simple feat to do, right? And a way that we like to look at it is we try and keep home expenses to under 30 to 35% of your income, right? Just to make sure that, you're not paying everything into a mortgage and you're eating tall ramen every night, right? We want to be able to hit your other financial goals, such as retirement. We want you to be able to travel, pay for your kids' education, whatever you like to do with your life, right? So that's kind of just back the napkin math of what we like to look at. So an example here, you need to be making roughly 20 grand a month as a household to afford this house, if that makes sense, right?
Is
You
that
need
on your savings goal?
that's just
Oh,
take
you're
number.
just saying taking 30% of, you're multiplying that by like 30%.
Yeah, which is
Okay,
correct.
to get to the 20.
Take
Yeah,
that
so that's like, what is that? That's like
240 a year.
10K each. Let's say it's two people, 10K each. So you're each making like 120.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
And that's with 20% down.
yep. So that's a hefty sum of money, right? Don't get me wrong. I think the average American households like 110 total. But in LA, like you're living in one of the most luxurious places in the world, right? And you're gonna have to
Oh, yeah.
pay for the sunshine, right? So,
And that's $1 million house, right? So
and it's
like,
a dollar house. It's correct.
I mean, all since you have your handy dandy calculator open, do you have the property taxes at what, at a percentage? Do you have that?
I think so. I think it's about
Okay.
1% or so.
Yeah. Do 1.25, 1.3, just to be, I like to be conservative, right? Because like the 6.5, okay, yes, I just looked it up. If you're doing an FHA loan, it's more like 5.5. If it's conventional with no points, it's 6.8. But I'm like, hey, let's just, could we get it lower than 6.5? Probably. But let's just be conservative, right? Um, and then, but also, in terms of, and I'll jump ahead a little bit in terms of like LA, right? I mean, shoot, you could buy a $10 million house, you could buy a 300K condo, right? So there's like a huge range, and I think LA is, um, you know, notorious for high prices. And sure, in a different state, a 300K could get you like a really nice mansion, and in LA, it's going to get you a possibly a one-bedroom condo, right? But it really depends like what stage of life you're in and like what you're looking for.
For
But
sure.
I would say like my average home price, um, even including single family homes like in LA, is probably in the 750, 800 range. So like I'm curious if you just throw 750K in there
Yeah,
as like a maybe a little bit, you know, um, obviously depends where you're looking and stuff. But so now you're looking at 5,000. So what is that you have to make per month with 20% down?
we'll just make it quick. We'll say 15 a month,
Yeah,
right? So then let's 15 times 12.
just playing with it. Yeah,
Yeah,
180. So
180.
divided by two, let's say there's two of you, then you know, and it doesn't have to be two. You could buy with friends. It could be three of you. It could be four of you, whatever. But let's say it's two of you. You're each making 90K. So not, not nothing, but also like that's with 20% down, 750. That's more like a single family home, three bedroom, probably two or three bedroom, with no like down payment assistance or grants or anything, right? So this is just realistic, but that's helpful
Yeah,
to, you know, to at least like part of your planning with folks of like, I'm sure you're helping them figure out their career moves and their jobs and what they're trying to make income wise too. So it's not just,
sure.
you're looking at the whole picture.
For sure. Like a lot of these numbers, we do conversations just like that, right? It's like, hey, like $1 million home sounds nice, but maybe we don't live on the west side. Maybe we move to the valley, right? Maybe we get more property there, right? Maybe we pay less. Maybe it's more affordable. And making sure this all fits within the big holistic picture is kind of my main job, right? It's saying, hey, like $5,000 is much more stomachable than $6,500 or $8,000 a month, right? Even though it may seem like you need this place, you're gonna be locked in that mortgage for a good amount of time, right? Potentially 30 years. So I want to make sure that it fits your goals and your plan in the rest of your life overall. Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay. Let's see if I have any questions for you here. Um, let's get to the down payment. I can ask you some questions
Oh
up
yeah.
front. So,
Yeah.
150 grand. I don't know a lot of people with that just sitting under their mattress, right? We got to find a way to get towards that goal. And the best way I think you can do it is by building an automated savings plan to help get you
Mm.
there, right? So what we like to do is just kind of back into it to see how you can get into this house. Okay. So quick math, we have more sophisticated software, but I think the Excel sheet does a great job just keeping it simple. At 150 grand, let's say we're starting from scratch, right? Saving for this home. Let's say we want to get in this home in 5 years from now, right? Average rate of return will be more conservative, right? So this depends on your investments and your risk tolerance and everything else, right? But we'll do something more conservative at about 6%. What you would need to do to get towards this goal would be save about $2,000 a month. Okay. Now, still a decent amount of money. Don't get me wrong, right? But if there's two of you and you're able to kind of hunker down, I think it could be feasible, right? Now, let's say you extend that. Let's say, hey, I want to get a house in 10 years, right? I'm a bit younger, want to save up. That's the time in half, right? Okay, so it's about $1,000 a month. Honestly, one of the biggest parts is just saving and getting towards this home. It doesn't matter as much how much your investments are doing, it's how much you're able really to save and get towards this down payment amount. Um, is really something we help coach people up on and just make sure they're staying on track for something like this. Um, questions on that, Sammy? I saw your face. You did
Yeah,
not
I love this.
dollars a month, but uh,
Well, yeah, no, it was actually at the 10 years because I'm like, man, 10 years, right? Like,
yeah.
um, that can start, I think, to feel a little demoralizing because
Mhm.
you're sort of like chasing inflation, right? So, like,
Yeah,
in 10 years, right, home prices have changed
sure.
and not necessarily because I think like there's very much this typical like, I'm a real estate broker. Everyone's always like, don't buy, don't wait, buy now because home prices are going to be higher in the future. And it's like, okay, is that just a sales tactic or is that true? And it's like, okay, well, you know, because I think, our generation, uh, we like lived the 2008 crash, like very much in the sort of, at least for me, it was like in the kind of beginning of my career.
Hmm.
Um, and I was like, cool, there's no jobs. There's no like, and we, this idea of like, oh my gosh, the bubble burst, right? Like the whole like real estate always goes up that everyone else grew up with and didn't really see massive changes in. Like I think we really very much have this like, oh, well, there's gonna be a crash, right? And yes, of course there are crashes and like fluctuations, but that was like a pretty intense period in real estate history, right? And I feel like um the reality is that yeah, things went down, but like if you didn't sell your home in 2008 or 2009 or whatever, and you just lived in it and paid your mortgage, your house is worth more now than it was 2007, right? Like now we're in 2024. So it's kind of like, yeah, there was a period in which there was this crash and like, um, I mean, I'm talking about the crash because that's why people are like, oh, I want to wait,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would you wait? Just buy a house now, right? Or because you need to save money. But I feel like it's really tough to like outsave the like your 150 in 10 years is not going to be worth as
No.
much it is as it is now because of inflation and because like everything's going up. And yeah, I don't know, can house prices just go up infinitely? I don't know, but that's I don't know what to say. Like we're not necessarily looking on like 50-year timelines. We're looking in like 5 or 10-year timelines of like so there's ups and downs, but like generally prices are going up. So 10 years can start to feel a little demoralizing too, because it's like, man, I'm saving
Yeah.
$1,000 a month for 10 years. And like, that 150 is not really like worth as much anymore, and then that house is worth more. And I think people are very like, oh, the housing market just goes up. And I'm like, when you're looking at the news, they're looking at national data, number one. So they're kind of averaging that. So then we have to look at LA, like LA and California specifically. And then you have to think about like the if you're from LA or you live in LA, you know that different parts of the city are changing at totally different rates. Okay. So like the west side has been expensive for a long time, right? But like 10 years ago, different parts of LA, like the prices were super different, right? Let's take and obviously we can start talking about like gentrification and all the challenges associated with that. But like, Silver Lake, Echo Park, right? Like that ship has sailed essentially in many ways um, from a like pricing standpoint. But like, let's take Inglewood as an example, right? Like Inglewood is a city that, is undergoing like such massive recent changes because of the SoFi Stadium now, because of the Olympics coming in 2028. Like, um,
Form
I mean, Inglewood is like
on
very
there.
tough to buy in, right? I have friends who like wanted to buy, they grew up in Inglewood and like wanted to buy a house. And then it just in like 5 years, it sort of like ran away from them in terms of pricing, right? So does it mean they cannot buy a home in LA? Like, no, of course, there's all price points in all different parts of the city, but like you also have to think about all the different local markets, and a lot changes in 5 or 10 years, right? So all that to say that the 10-year savings timeline can feel a little demoralizing, though it's very easy to be like, look, it's actually, if you're 20 and you're saving, for 10 years and thinking about buying a house when you're 30, like it's actually really doable, like the way you just laid that out.
Yeah.
Um, you can save 150. And then the secret is you don't actually need 150, right? Because um, you don't have to put 20% down. Obviously, if you have it, use it. But even folks who have the 20% down sometimes are putting less down because let's say you find a house that you love, it's in the neighborhood you love, and it's the right size, it has 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, whatever. But it needs a little love, right? The kitchen's a little 90s. The bathroom's a little, right? Um, maybe you decide to put 15% down or 10% down, and then you have, I don't know, I'm not making, they're just random numbers, but let's say you have 150. Maybe you put 100K down and now you have 50 for renovations, right?
Mhm.
So that's where a good like financial advisor and a lender will help you figure out like it's not just this one size fits all, like I need to save 20% and then that's it. And then I can only, and then maybe we got you a grant for like 10K or 20K, or there's a grant right now for 50K that like covers all your closing costs
Yeah, yeah.
and you can, right? So then now that increases, like instead of that money, because that 150 is just the down payment. It doesn't count, the prepaid interest, the escrow fees, the title fees, the commissions, the recording fees. And I mean, inflation has really made those costs go up, right? So now you're looking at like another maybe 10 or 20K in closing costs. So it starts to become a little overwhelming how much you have to save if you're really trying to get only to that 20%. But if we're able to kind of like, I mean, if you have 150 saved, you are golden. Like, I know maybe that's not going to get you, a $1.5 million house with 20% right next to where your apartment is. Okay. But it, like, you actually have a lot to play with. You could put less down, you could put more down, you could like do renovations, you could cover closing costs, you could get a grant. So, um, it's cool to think that like $2,000 a month saving goal gets you there in like 5 years, and 1,000 a month saving goal gets you there in 10 years. I mean, it's a stretch, but like
I mean,
you could totally do that if you
there's a ton of leverage.
figure out what your priorities are.
Well, in both of our examples, these people are making 15 grand a month, right? Which after taxes is like nine, right? You should be able to save 2 grand a month bringing home net $9,000, right? If you're really serious about buying a home in 5 years, like it's feasible to do, right? Same with the other example. You're making 240 a year between the two of you, saving for $1 million house. Like you should be able to save over 2 grand a month, right? Or we could definitely
Totally.
use your budget, right? And make sure your priorities are straight. I love to travel. I love to do fun things too. But like if you want to save for one of the most expensive cities in the world, like you got to save for it. You got to put a plan together,
Right.
right? So you can wait 10 years, save less, which is fine, right? Or you kind of hunker down and you can get a lot quicker, right? And then you could also pull
Right.
those levers that Sammy was talking about, whether it's putting less down, right? Getting a grant, getting less of a property. We're here to help analyze those things for you, and Sammy's here to help put you in that home, wherever it may be.
Yeah.
Um, and you're also right,
And
though.
the lender is the other piece too, who like can really, put those numbers in perspective. Because I feel like, um, yeah, I tell people, I'm like, do not use the Zillow Redfin calculator.
No,
Like I think this spreadsheet that you have is super helpful because your see the difference between your spreadsheet and like the Zillow calculator is like your spreadsheet you're using as um let's look at this as like part of your whole financial picture. Like, how much are you spending? I'm sure you're budgeting with people too. Like, how much are you spending on food and education and blah, 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 right? So you're seeing it as part of like the whole picture. And then I'm assuming helping people figure out, like, okay, well, how do I kind of shift some of that into saving for the house?
yeah,
Whereas on Zillow Redfin, you're just looking at a picture of a house and then it's telling you it's going to cost you, $6,000 a month or $8,000 a month or 5,000. And it's like, that sucks. That's demoralizing. That's first, the numbers are wrong because how much are you putting down? What's the rate? Like, you don't
yeah,
know what rate you're qualified for. Like, if you're FHA versus conventional versus a bank statement loan versus your credit score, like your rate changes and it depends on, based off. So, what rate are you using? Just the random one on the internet. And then you're not taking into account all the different possible programs and incentives. And I just talked to a credit union person. They have a whole program, right? Everyone's coming out with different ways to help people buy a home. And the calculator doesn't show you that. So then you just see this payment and you're like, well, this sucks. I'm
yeah,
not going to ever, right? And you're not actually like engaging in the process of figuring it out. So that's why I'm like, don't use those calculators. Just talk to a real person and just ask them, like, what does this actually look like, And then
yeah,
the number might still suck, but at least then you have a plan to like get there with
yeah.
Steven, right? Like, okay, well, let's figure out how to how to get there.
Yeah, like saving 150 grand is no easy feat, right? But our job is to help you get there and then, make sure it fits within your life, right? And we get it. We're real people. We're nice people. We're not just financial advisor, real estate sharks, right? Like we're here to actually help you and
Ah,
just
totally.
just run the numbers. I get a couple questions for you.
Sure.
People buying a home, what are some of the main expenses that you see that people don't think about? Whether it's property tax or like fixing up a kitchen or like,
Totally.
interest expenses, like what do people kind of miss?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I feel like there's two sort of points at which that question comes up. So number one would be like, okay, you have the price of the house and then the down payment, right? Then you have this like mythical closing costs. Like, what is that, right? And I like to divide those into some of them I would consider like an actual cost. Like, this is a fee that you're paying, right? So maybe there's like a lender origination fee, there's a appraisal fee, notary fee, title, escrow. Like, these are actual, I don't know, expenses that like wouldn't have incurred if you didn't buy a house. Um and then the other piece of it is that if you're getting a loan on the house, I mean, if you're buying cash, there's just fewer closing costs because the lender, there's just costs associated with borrowing the money. If you're getting a loan, the lender is going to collect at closing what I would call like prepaids or things you would have paid for anyway, but you're paying them up front. Okay. So that's going to be like your prorated property tax, right? So like at at whatever day you close, anything before that the seller's responsible for, anything after that you're responsible for. So it gets prorated because it's only paid twice a year, but the lender is going to sort of pre-collect like a few months of property tax. Um, so yeah, that's a closing cost. It's part of the money that you have to bring to closing, but it's kind of like, well, you were going to pay that anyway. It
Yeah.
wasn't really a fee. Same with interest. So like usually if you close, on the 15th of the month, your mortgage isn't due till the first, not 15 days later, but like 45 days later. And people are like, oh, I got a free month. It's like, well, no, you just prepaid that interest at
Yeah. Yeah.
closing. It's not free, but you do have this sort of like grace period, which is nice. Like if you're renting, you basically have a month where you don't pay rent and you don't pay a mortgage, just from like a monthly perspective. But you've prepaid that interest at closing, so you were going to pay it anyway, but you're prepaying it. And then if you're, and same, usually with a lender, they'll pay your property taxes and insurance. They're collecting the property tax and then they're collecting the home insurance too. So you would have paid your home insurance, but they're sort of pre-collecting that. So I would say those are kind of like the closing costs that, you know, you they you have to pay them at closing, but you're sort of prepaying them, versus actual fees. And then the only, like, if you're in escrow, the only cost really that is out of pocket would be like inspections. So if you're buying a house, um, I generally recommend that you get an inspection, so that you're paying out of pocket. So like if you don't buy the house, you lose that. But I'm always like, wouldn't you rather lose like a few $100 than like
Correct.
hundreds of thousands of dollars, like buying a,
Once your
yeah,
foundation's up after you bought the place or realize, you need rent.
exactly, yeah. And
Yeah.
then that's the other thing is like, yeah, get a home inspection, obviously to see like, number one, is this house just gonna be a total nightmare, right? And it's like, you know what, never mind, like let's get out, get your deposit back. But then two, is there something where it's like a legitimate negotiation? Like, oh, we didn't know that the sewer line was broken. Like, we couldn't have known that when we made the offer. The seller didn't know that. Like, we weren't trying to be shady. Just we found this out and let's negotiate something, right? Um, and then three is just like, here's a list of things that you're gonna have to deal with. You're a homeowner. Stuff's gonna break, right? I always tell people like when I started investing in real estate, people would be like, well, Sammy, but what if the roof needs to be replaced? And I'm like, the roof will need to be replaced. Like, it's a house. Like, you have to replace the roof. The question is when, right?
Yeah.
Is the inspection report telling you that this roof is like end of life? Then you better be budgeting to replace that roof like in the next year or so. Or is the roof like have 10 or 15 years on it? It's like you will need to replace it, but like you have time, right? You don't need to be like thinking about that. So in your question of, the expenses, it's like the inspection report is not just giving you an issue, like what might be the potential issues be, but also giving you like a potential timeline, because
Yeah,
replacing a roof in 1 year is very different than replacing a roof in 10 years in terms of your like budgeting.
for sure.
um so that's what I like to share with people is like, there will be costs. I mean, even if the house is perfect, right? And there's nothing wrong, it's like in 15 years you will have to replace the roof, like,
Yeah.
or whatever, 20 years.
Part of life.
um
Okay, I got another one.
it just is what it is.
That was great. Ton of information there. Learned a ton about the closing costs and everything else in between. Tell me more about these assistant programs that you've done. I know you're really involved in them. 150 grand sounds like a lot, but I know you've been able to get tens of thousands of dollars off with some of these grants. Like,
Totally.
what does that look like for you, and how do you help clients with that?
Yeah, no, that's great. So that I do sort of like to give the overview, and then I really like to have people talk to the lender because it depends on your income and your credit, like what you actually qualify for. And some are based off you, the borrower, and some are based off where the property is, right? So, like if I know you're looking on, the west side of LA, I'm not going to refer you to this grant that I know is not going to, right? The property is not going to qualify for that grant. But the gist of it is there's a few programs like Cal HFA. They had the famous 20% Dream program, but they that ran out of money. But they have a program that's 3%. It's always available. This one is great. So they're essentially loaning you 3% down payment. You don't need 20% down to buy a house. Um, you can buy a house with 3% down, right? Um, so they'll essentially loan you that 3%. You do need to have some money, right, to pay closing costs and stuff. Um, and I'm actually curious about, some folks have pulled from their 401ks to do that. So I'm curious your thoughts on that. Um, at least for me, it's like, well, if it's the difference between you buying a house or not, like go for it. But you know
Sure.
what the implications are. Um,
I'll
and
hop in.
then, but that, oh
I
yeah,
can start
go
quickly.
for that.
So 401k loans, I honestly think they're great loans if you're going to stay at your company. To be completely
Mm,
frank, you could go up to $50,000 or half of your 401k, whatever the lesser is, right? So let's say you need 50 grand, you have 150 in a 401k, like you could take it out, 50 grand, and you pay yourself back interest if your plan allows it,
that's
which
cool.
is awesome. It's an easy way to get capital. You give yourself a loan, so you can give yourself this lump sum. It doesn't just have to be for house. What if you have to fix a roof, buy a car, whatever, right? That being said, if you leave the job or you're terminated from your job, you have to pay all that money back or it's taxable, right? So it's
Oh,
like you made an extra 50 grand that year. That's going to bump up your taxes, especially if you got
mm,
money in a house, right? Maybe 20, 30, 40% of that is taxed, right? Like you got to be aware and cognizant of that. So if you think you're in a long-term job, if you think you can pay the money back and you need the money, like it's honestly a really great lever to pull instead of pulling from, other locations to grab
right.
from, in my opinion. Obviously, savings, brokerage accounts first, right? But if you need extra funds, I think it's better than, going into more loans or anything of that nature.
Cool. Yeah. No, I think that's great. And it's been a really good tool, but yeah, it's like double-edged sword, right? It's like, well, are you feeling like you're going to be able to, you know, pay that back and save and
Yeah.
rebuild that, but I didn't know that about the leaving your company, so that's a really good point.
Leaving's hard. You miss out on market gains, which I mean, if you're going to pay the money back and you need it, like it's not as big of a deal in my opinion. But they take out 50 grand, market goes up
Right.
10%.
You've
You're
lost that.
about 5 grand, right? So um, that's something to be aware of too. But more so, it's like the stability of the job, just because that big tax liability, like, actually terrifies me.
Yeah, totally. No, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, there's, in terms of like that that style of a down payment assistance, it's sort of like a second loan at 0%. Like you don't have to make payments on it, but it's just like a silent second, it's called. The issue is that sometimes often those types of programs come with a little bit higher interest rate. So like nothing is free, right? So, but if you that's good for someone who possibly like has a decent income but like doesn't have a lot saved, right? So that helps because it's like, okay, well, the higher interest rate will make it so that you need a little bit higher income to qualify. But if they're essentially lending you this money and that gets you into the house, it's like great. Now I think there's a lot. Credit unions have been tough. They tend to have like lower rates, but they're not necessarily as responsive, I think. And like LA is a competitive market, right? So like we're making offers on Sunday night, and I kind of need your lender to answer the phone on Sunday night. Right. So that's, I would say, one of the issues. But I've talked to a couple lately that have programs where you can put less down, and then there's no, it's called PMI, private mortgage insurance. And
Okay.
that's where the 20%, comes from, is like if you're putting 20%, the bank is saying, or the lender is saying, like, okay, you've put enough money in that we don't have to protect ourselves. Like, if you don't pay us, we can take the house back and we'll feel comfortable selling it and not lose money. But if they're lending you 97%, right? If you're putting 3% down, they're lending you 97% of the value of the home. They're a little like, oh, it's a little risky. We're going to charge you for an insurance policy, essentially private mortgage insurance. So that's what the PMI is. But now a lot of these lenders that have these programs are letting you put less down without charging you the PMI, which you would be you can always buy out the PMI, but you would be surprised how much that few $100 a month like changes what you qualify for and like makes a big difference in terms of savings and stuff. So that even just that is a huge
Yeah.
bonus for folks. And then there is a grant right now that's like 20,000 in some census tracts and 50,000 in others. And frankly, so much of LA qualifies for this that I've been pushing that. And that's just straight up 50,000 or 20,000 that you can use to like buy down the rate, cover closing costs, and anything left can be can be used for down payment. So that's been a really good program too, because it's but using it to buy down the rate has really changed. It's lowered people's monthly payment to a place where they're like, wow, I'm buying a house that I didn't think I could afford on the Zillow calculator, but actually, based on the numbers I went through with Steven, like this is really
It's feasible.
this is doable. Like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, this is totally within my budget. And it's been a game changer. So
Yeah. Those
that's a really good thing.
those programs are huge. Can help out a ton of people and
Yeah.
they're unique, a lot of rules, but Sammy's been on top of them. So
Yeah.
ask questions. I think
Yeah.
I think that's probably good on time. 45 minutes. I hope that's a lot to
Yeah.
help people
No,
dive
I mean
in.
so much. Yeah, I mean I feel like I could talk with Steven for hours, but we'll leave it at this so you can move on and do other things with your life. But both of us have, little Calendly links. You can just have a free call with us and chat more about your specific situation. So I'm going to put those links. They're down here in the description. And um, yeah, I mean, I think both of us like vibe wise are very much like I'm happy to like listen to what your ideas are and like talk you through and at least point you in the right direction. Like
Yeah, for sure.
obviously, we get paid if somebody like decides to work with us, but I think part of our commitment has been just like feel free to have a free call with us and just like see if you even like us, like see
Great.
if
I
we're a good fit, and I
help.
really appreciate that about you too.
Yeah, I love helping people first, right? For a fit. Great. If not, I hope I was able to help you a little bit with your
Yeah.
finances. Um,
Nice.
man,
Well,
cool. Good
thank
stuff.
you.
Do it again soon. Yeah, peace out.
All right. Have a good one. Bye.